Hey everybody, this is Meredith Miller with Inner Integration. Today, the topic I have for you is you're in a narcissistically abusive relationship when. So this video I'm doing as a preparation for an interview that I have coming up with a general audience. These are people who may or may not have been in an abusive relationship with a narcissist, a psychopath, a sociopath, or other manipulator, and they don't know how to recognize yet. They haven't been down that rabbit hole yet where you find the keyword and then suddenly you find all these videos and this information and you totally get it. Also because my channel doesn't have one of these videos yet. So the signs that I'm going to give you today about how you know if you are a current target or looking back in retrospect if you have been a target of narcissistic abuse is less about the red flags in the other person and more about how you feel. Keep in mind that all of these apply to intimate relationships, friendships, family, boss, coworkers, could be anyone in your life, though this will be most prominent in intimate relationships and the family. The first sign is you feel like something's off, but you can't really explain it. You can't really put your finger on it. And when you try to explain it to people, they usually don't understand it, or they're minimizing things, or they're telling you that somehow you're probably just making it all up in your head. You're confused. You're confused about the relationship. You're confused about who you are. You're confused about what reality is, what's happening, and what your role is in that. You feel like it's all your fault, and you keep trying and trying to make it work unsuccessfully. Your self-esteem drops because as you try to make it work, you try to fix things and it's not working, that lowers your self-esteem. Your insecurity rises. You have this growing sense of insecurity due to all of the comparisons, the put downs, whether they be direct or these little indirect, quiet remarks or the backhanded compliments. You just can't find solid ground. It's like the ground underneath you keeps moving. It's like the goalpost keeps moving. You're in this sweet, mean cycle where sometimes this person is sweet to you and then sometimes they're mean. You're in this constant intermittent reinforcement. You never know where you stand. One day the person has a certain opinion that's very drastic about you or the relationship or life in general or somebody else in your life, and then the next moment or the next day or the next week, suddenly it's the entire opposite of that. You're developing brain fog. It feels like muddy thinking, sluggish thinking. Your brain is it's not really running correctly. And then there's the fog, which they abbreviate FOG, fear, obligation, and guilt. So you have a lot of fear around this relationship. You have a huge sense of obligation and this huge building, growing sense of guilt to try to make it work. Essentially, that's also keeping you stuck in the relationship. You're doubting yourself. You're doubting if it's all your fault. You're doubting who you really are. You're doubting if you have the right to feel the way you feel, if your feelings are even valid. You're doubting about your perceptions of reality. Things happened, things are happening, and the other person is telling you that's not the case and that you're wrong, and they have all these justifications and reasons why your perception of reality is wrong. And so you enter more and more into that sense of doubt and confusion. You develop odd pains, tension, injuries, or chronic illnesses. Maybe even your doctor doesn't understand where this is all coming from. They can't find an organic cause for whatever is going wrong with your health. You have a growing sense of loneliness, even in that relationship. That sense of loneliness might be because you feel like you're being ignored sometimes, the person isn't available, they're not there. It could also be that you have more of a sense of rejection because this person is always comparing you and putting you down and telling you that you're not enough, either directly or indirectly. You feel like you're constantly being provoked and it's really hard not to react. Then if you react, they point the finger at you, you look like the bad person, you start to wonder if maybe you're the abusive person after all. Yet there's always these provocations that are happening. You feel like you're going crazy at times. You're gonna notice a lowered performance at work, at school. You just don't have the same efficiency. You don't have the same passion. You don't have the same drive. Your brain just isn't working well enough for you to keep up to where you were in the past. You notice an inability to retain information. Maybe this is in school, maybe you're trying to read a book or read an article or you watch a movie and you can't remember what happened, or you remember very little because your brain just can't assimilate that information. It can't transfer that information from short-term to long-term memory. You notice you have low energy, maybe even no energy. Sometimes it's like your energy is totally depleted and flatlined. Walter Rizzo describes it like a plant that's drying up, like a tree that's drying all up. There's no more water there. There's no more life. You've given up a lot of yourself to try to make this relationship work, and you keep giving up more and more of yourself to the point where you don't recognize yourself. You've lost your sense of self. There are these constant comparisons. It's like you're always in competition with people in this person's life. It could be their exes, their other children, their friends, their family, coworkers, anybody. Maybe even somebody that they don't even know who does something similar that you do in life. And you always feel like you're being compared to those people, and it always ends up making you feel like you're just not enough. That, of course, causes a deep sense of worthlessness and shame. That goalpost just keeps moving. That could be accusations that the person is making towards you that aren't true. It could be the comparisons. It could be their demands that would make them happy, and if you don't meet those demands, then they punish you or they ignore you. You feel like you have to make yourself seem small and almost invisible in order to make that person shine, in order to make that person bigger, in order to make that person feel okay with themselves. So essentially, over time, you dim and dim your own light. That creativity that you used to have, that passion, that sense of purpose, it's gone. Somehow it's just stifled away. You try to do those creative projects that you used to love, things that make your heart really dance for joy, and you just can't. There's a big blockage there. Everything feels so difficult. This could be a regular conversation, and you're having circular conversations that just go on and on and on and never resolve anything. You end up feeling like just going to the grocery store is exhausting and difficult because everything with that person is difficult. This is at work. It could be that every project, every email, every meeting is just so damn difficult. You feel like you can never win, even when you're right. And there's never a win-win situation in that relationship. You feel ignored when you set boundaries with that person, or otherwise punished for setting boundaries. Your boundaries are continually violated over and over again. And then when you call that person out or you try to talk about that, what happens is they deny what they did, and then they flip it back around on you and start to attack you and accuse you of being the one to blame. You have underlying feelings of growing frustration, anger, anxiety, depression, even panic and dread, and sometimes you don't even know why. You constantly feel judged, criticized, sabotaged. You're working really hard to please someone else, and in the process, you're sacrificing your own needs, your own feelings, and your own sense of self. There's a lot of stories that just don't add up. You'll notice ambiguity, vagueness, and then there's a lot of plausible deniability, which just contributes to your sense of confusion and self-doubt. Everything in your relationship feels like a one-way street. It's like the rules just don't apply to that other person. The things they demand of you, they're not willing to do themselves. You notice that you're giving and giving and giving without reciprocity. You might even be giving more and more, hoping that that's going to cause that person to want to be reciprocal. You're walking on eggshells to avoid the other person's anger, punishment, criticism, and judgment. Anything that you say could be interpreted as an attack by that person, which then gives them the feeling that they have the right to attack you. You dissociate. You check out sometimes. You're just not there. You don't maybe even know where you went. Or maybe you go into other 4F states like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. You might notice that you turn to distractions or addictions in order to numb out all of these horrible feelings that you're going through. You don't hear the voice of your intuition anymore, and you don't know who to trust. You notice that you've developed self-destructive patterns. And maybe you even know that you're being mistreated, yet somehow you just can't get yourself to leave yet. So which of these signs drove you to seek answers? Or was it something I didn't mention yet? I would love to hear from you in the comments below, because that helps me to prepare for this interview. That also helps other people who are watching this video to see something that they resonate with. I want to remind you to check out the Inner Integration podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, on the Mental Health News Radio Network. You're going to get loads of free content there. On the other weeks when there aren't new videos up on YouTube, there's a new podcast, and it's different than what's coming up on YouTube. So you get more content there. Please check us out on Instagram and Facebook for daily content reminders to help you in your journey of self-healing after narcissistic abuse. I'm sending you all a big hug.